Nazi gold, secret missions. Hollywood legends were forced to shoot in muddy trenches for months. The 60s brought us war epics so authentic that real veterans couldn't tell the difference between film and their nightmares. Ever wondered which military advisor stormed off set when a director refused historical accuracy? 1. The Longest Day, 1962. Imagine needing 3 directors, 5 armies, and 23,000 extras just to film one battle. The Longest Day threw $10 million at recreating D-Day with fanatical precision, making it the most expensive black and white film until Schindler's List. Producer Darryl F. Zanuck was so obsessed with authenticity that he hired actual D-Day commanders as consultants and shot on the real Normandy beaches. The film features 42 international stars, including John Wayne, Sean Connery, and Henry Fonda. But here's the kicker. Most of them worked for pennies just to be part of cinema history. When a studio executive suggested adding a love story, Zanuck reportedly snapped, "This is the biggest military operation in history, not a love story." The film's brutally realistic approach shocked audiences used to sanitized war, with Variety calling it warfare experienced at a level of reality never before attempted. German actors in the film insisted on correcting their dialogue to make their characters sound authentically military rather than cartoonishly evil. The film's D-Day sequence became so definitive that actual documentary footage is often mistaken for scenes from the movie. 2. The Great Escape, 1963. Before motorcycle jumps became Hollywood cliches, Steve McQueen's fence-clearing attempt in The Great Escape left jaws on theater floors nationwide. Director John Sturges built a fully functional POW camp in a German forest, where actors lived for weeks to capture the claustrophobic reality of captivity. The film's iconic score became so embedded in British culture that English football fans still chant it during matches against Germany. The real shock? The actual escape was even more audacious. The film downplayed the true story. 76 men escaped through tunnels dug with improvised tools, and Hitler was so furious he ordered 50 recaptured officers executed. Charles Bronson, who played the Tunnel King, actually suffered from claustrophobia and forced himself into the dirt tunnels take after take, often emerging in cold sweats. McQueen performed all but one of his own motorcycle stunts, with the famous jump completed by his friend Bud Ekins. When German officials complained about the film's portrayal of prison guards, Sturges invited several former POWs to the premiere who verified they were actually much worse than shown. 3. The Dirty Dozen, 1967. Hollywood executives nearly had heart attacks when they read the script, featuring murderers and psychopaths as heroes. The Dirty Dozen exploded onto screens with Lee Marvin leading condemned military prisoners on a suicide mission that made audiences question who the real monsters of war were. Director Robert Aldrich fought the studio for months to keep the film's brutal ending, arguing, "War isn't pretty. Why should war movies be?" The cast endured 3 weeks of actual military training, so grueling that 5 actors quit before filming began. Lee Marvin, a decorated Marine who fought at Iwo Jima, constantly corrected the military advisors on set. The film's chateau assault sequence was so realistic that several veterans walked out of screenings, with one telling Variety it brought back the smell of death. The infamous trench knife scene was filmed in one take because actor John Cassavetes couldn't bear to repeat it. The film's controversial portrayal of warfare as morally corrupting, rather than ennobling, caused conservative critics to label it anti-American, while it simultaneously became required viewing at several military academies for its depiction of unconventional warfare. 4. Where Eagles Dare, 1968. 2 words, Castle Invasion. Where Eagles Dare features the most ambitious fortress assault ever filmed, with Richard Burton and Clint Eastwood battling through an Alpine stronghold so treacherous that 3 stuntmen were hospitalized during production. The film's cable car sequence was shot without safety nets 3,000 feet above jagged mountain peaks, with Eastwood refusing a stunt double. Author Alistair MacLean wrote the screenplay and novel simultaneously, creating plot twists so complex that even the actors weren't given complete scripts until filming their final scenes. The production team counted every bullet fired in the film, a staggering 6,374, then the record for most ammunition used in a movie. German viewers were shocked by the film's authentic military details, wondering how British filmmakers obtained such classified information about Schloss Adler, a real Nazi intelligence headquarters. Clint Eastwood, still establishing himself as an action star, kills more people in this single film than in all his Dollars trilogy, westerns combined. The movie's influence reaches beyond cinema. The British SAS has reportedly used the film during tactical training exercises to demonstrate infiltration techniques. Fifth Battle of the Bulge, 1965. Tank battles so realistic that military historians use them as teaching tools. Battle of the Bulge deployed actual Sherman tanks borrowed from the Spanish Army, creating earth-shaking combat sequences across frozen landscapes that cost more than the entire budgets of most 60s films. When told the timeline was historically inaccurate, producer Milton Sperling famously replied, "I'm making a war movie, not a war." The film's controversial departure from historical accuracy enraged President Eisenhower so much that he publicly denounced it after a White House screening. Despite this, its battle choreography was revolutionary, with cinematographer Jack Hildyard developing new camera mounts to capture inside the tank perspectives never before seen by audiences. The production became notorious for its dangerous working conditions, with temperatures dropping so low during the winter shoot that fuel froze in the tank's engines. Actor Robert Shaw studied captured Nazi footage to perfect his portrayal of German tank commander Colonel Hessler, creating a villain so unnervingly human that German audiences found themselves uncomfortably sympathetic. 6. Von Ryan's Express, 1965. Frank Sinatra commanding a hijacked Nazi train through the Alps while being pursued by the Wehrmacht. Von Ryan's Express turned a prison break into a high-speed chess game with actual locomotives. Director Mark Robson convinced Italian railway authorities to give him control of miles of track and multiple trains, creating authentic crashes that wouldn't be attempted again until The Bridge on the River Kwai. The film's shocking ending wasn't in the original script. Sinatra insisted his character die, arguing, "In war, not everyone gets to go home." This decision cost him $250,000 in potential sequel earnings, but earned him critical respect. The production used authentic German Messerschmitt aircraft for aerial sequences, with one vintage plane crashing during filming. The pilot survived. Sinatra, known for doing single takes, actually requested multiple reshoots of the tunnel escape sequence, telling the crew, "If we're going to show war, let's show how terrifying it really is." The claustrophobic train compartments weren't sets, but actual vintage rail cars, with cameras mounted in innovative ways that influenced action filmmaking for decades. 7. Hell is for Heroes, 1962. Before Saving Private Ryan showed the psychological cost of combat, Hell is for Heroes had the courage to portray American soldiers as frightened, exhausted men rather than superheroes. Steve McQueen's haunting performance as a battle-addicted soldier was so disturbing that military advisors on set questioned whether the film was appropriate for American audiences. Director Don Siegel shot in chronological order, reducing food and sleep for his actors as filming progressed to capture authentic combat fatigue. The results were so convincing that several scenes were initially flagged by censors who thought they were using actual war footage. The film's infamous empty battlefield sequence, where soldiers wait in paralyzed terror for an attack, runs nearly 4 minutes without dialogue, unheard of in 1960s war films. McQueen insisted on using real mud and spending nights in foxholes to understand his character's mindset. His 1,000-yard stare became so unsettling that co-star Bobby Darin later commented, "I wasn't sure if Steve was acting or having a breakdown." The film's unflinching portrayal of combat as chaotic rather than heroic led military recruiters to request it not be shown near recruitment offices. 8. The Bridge at Remagen, 1969. The only major war film where the crew faced actual invasion. The Bridge at Remagen began shooting in Czechoslovakia just as Soviet tanks rolled in to crush the Prague Spring, forcing the production to flee across borders with film cans hidden in luggage. This chaotic production yielded one of the most authentic-looking war films ever, with director John Guillermin refusing to build miniatures for the spectacular bridge destruction sequence. The production constructed a full-scale section of the Ludendorff Bridge on the Vltava River, with engineering so precise that several Czech officials requested the blueprints, suspecting the filmmakers had obtained classified military documents. The film portrays both American and German soldiers with moral complexity rare for the era, showing Germans defending the bridge as ordinary men following orders rather than fanatical Nazis. Actor Robert Vaughn interviewed actual Remagen veterans, incorporating their mannerisms into his performance as the conflicted Major Kruger. The film's bridge collapse sequence required so much explosive power that nearby villages had to be temporarily evacuated. When German audiences saw the film, many were stunned by its historical accuracy, with one German critic noting, "This isn't just a war film, it's a document of our moral failure." 9. Tora, 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 1970. Hollywood meets Japan in the first major international co-production about World War II. Tora, Tora, Tora employed separate American and Japanese film crews to tell both sides of Pearl Harbor with unprecedented balance. The production rebuilt entire sections of Pearl Harbor and fielded more authentic World War II aircraft than remained in some countries' actual air forces. The film's aerial coordinator, a former World War II fighter pilot, crashed and died during filming, leading many crew members to believe the production was cursed. Japanese director Akira Kurosawa was originally hired but left the project, allegedly saying, "Americans like war depicted as entertainment too much." The Pearl Harbor attack sequence was so realistic that footage has been mistakenly used in documentaries. The Japanese Zero fighters seen in the film were actually modified American T-6 Texan aircraft, as almost no flyable Zeros existed. This technical achievement won the film an Academy Award for special effects. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's famous line about awakening a sleeping giant was likely never actually said, but the film's inclusion of it was so powerful that it's now commonly attributed to him in history books. Dziesiąty King Rat, 1965. Before Deer Hunter explored how war destroys the soul, King Rat showed how Changi POW camp turned starving Allied soldiers against each other. George Siegel delivers a masterclass as the amoral American corporal who thrives while others wither, creating a character so morally ambiguous that test audiences demanded reshoots to make him more likable. Director Brian Forbes refused. The production recreated Changi with such detail that several former prisoners who visited the set had emotional breakdowns. The film's unflinching depiction of Allied soldiers stealing from each other and collaborating with guards was considered so potentially damaging to military morale that the Department of Defense refused any cooperation. The infamous rat farm sequence, where prisoners breed rats for meat while telling themselves they're rabbits, was based on actual survivor accounts. When one studio executive suggested toning down the scene, Forbes reportedly sent him graphic photos from the real camp. Despite commercial challenges, the film found an unlikely champion in military historian Stephen Ambrose, who called it perhaps the most honest portrayal of how captivity distorts human character. 11th Castle, Keep, 1969. Surrealism meets war in the film the Army tried to suppress. Castle Keep stars Burt Lancaster as a one-eyed major defending a medieval castle filled with priceless art while descending into madness. Director Sidney Pollack created dreamlike battle sequences where soldiers discuss philosophy while artillery explodes around them, challenging every convention of the genre. The U.S. military initially supported the production, then withdrew after reading the complete script, calling it morally confused. Pollack shot on location in Yugoslavia with hundreds of local extras, many of whom had actually fought in World War II, and corrected military details between takes. The film's castle interior shots feature authentic 15th century artwork on loan from European museums, creating the most culturally valuable film set ever assembled. Lancaster insisted on performing his own stunts despite a recent knee injury, leading to the distinctive limping gait that makes his character seem perpetually wounded. The film's controversial brothel sequences and religious imagery caused it to be banned in several countries, with one Italian critic calling it American blasphemy against European suffering. Today, filmmakers from Coppola to Malick cite it as the hidden masterpiece that liberated war cinema from propaganda. 12th, Play Dirty, 1969. The anti-war film so controversial that several theaters refused to show it. Play Dirty stars Michael Caine leading a team of criminals on a desert mission where their own commanders are more dangerous than the enemy. Director André de Toth, who lost an eye in an accident, brought uncompromising vision to the project, telling his producers, "I'm not making a recruitment poster." The film was shot in the Tabernas Desert of Spain, with temperatures reaching 115 degrees Fahrenheit, causing several actors to suffer heat exhaustion so severe that medical teams were on constant standby. The production used actual World War II vehicles salvaged from North African battlefields, with the mechanics restoring them to working condition. When studio executives requested a more uplifting ending, de Toth threatened to remove his name from the credits. Caine later revealed that his character was based on a real British officer he'd served under in Korea, a man so morally bankrupt that Caine had considered reporting him for war crimes. The film's final scene, with its shocking betrayal, caused walkouts during preview screenings, but has since become recognized as one of cinema's most honest statements about military bureaucracy's disregard for human life. 13 Anzio, 1968. The battle film, so authentic that veterans couldn't watch it. Anzio recreates one of the war's bloodiest stalemates, with Robert Mitchum and Peter Falk navigating Italian beaches, turned killing fields. Director Edward Dmytryk, himself a victim of the Hollywood blacklist, brought personal understanding of persecution to the film's portrayal of soldiers caught between incompetent leadership and murderous enemies. The production employed thousands of Italian extras, many of whose parents had experienced the actual battle. The beach landing sequences required so many pyrotechnics that local authorities initially refused permits, relenting only when the filmmakers demonstrated their safety protocols by detonating explosives near the mayor's own office. Mitchum, known for his relaxed demeanor, became uncharacteristically invested in the historical accuracy of his war correspondent character, interviewing actual Anzio journalists and incorporating their observations into his performance. The film's controversial portrayal of American tactical blunders was based on classified documents recently declassified, leading military historians to praise its accuracy while Pentagon officials condemned its unpatriotic perspective. 14. Submarine X-1, 1968. Underwater tension taken to claustrophobic extremes. Submarine X-1 depicts British midget submarines attacking a German battleship in a Norwegian fjord, with James Cain leading a suicide mission after his previous crew was massacred. Director William Graham actually filmed in functional submarines underwater, rather than on sound stages, creating authentic conditions so stressful that 2 actors quit mid-production. The Royal Navy provided technical advice so detailed that several scenes had to be modified for security reasons, as they too accurately depicted classified submarine operations. The film's attack sequences were shot in Scottish locks using scale model ships, with such precision that naval engineers studied the footage. The production's commitment to authenticity extended to casting. Several roles went to actual submariners rather than actors. Caan later described the filming as the most physically demanding experience of my career, with cast members spending up to 8 hours daily in frigid water. The film's unflinching portrayal of submarine warfare's psychological toll influenced generations of underwater thrillers, with Wolfgang Petersen citing it as a key reference for Das Boot. 15. Attack and Retreat, 1964. The only major World War II film co-produced by Soviet and Italian studios during the Cold War. Attack and Retreat follows Italian soldiers on the Russian front as they transform from fascist invaders to frozen, starving refugees. Director Giuseppe De Santis shot on actual battle sites with Soviet military cooperation, accessing locations and equipment unavailable to Western filmmakers. The production employed thousands of Red Army soldiers as extras, many wearing their father's original uniforms. The film's unsparing depiction of Italian military incompetence caused a diplomatic incident, with the Italian government attempting to block its release. Actor Arthur Kennedy lived with Russian villagers for weeks before filming, absorbing their still raw memories of the war. The film's most harrowing sequence, a frostbite amputation performed without anesthesia, was based on survivor accounts so graphic that several crew members couldn't watch the filming. Soviet audiences were shocked by the humanizing portrayal of Italian soldiers, while Italian audiences were confronted with their nation's overlooked war crimes, making the film a commercial failure in both countries, but a landmark in honest war cinema. On Altıncı Tobruk, 1967, desert warfare with historical stakes so high that the production nearly killed its stars. Tobruk stars Rock Hudson and George Peppard, leading Jewish German soldiers, former prisoners, on a mission to destroy Nazi fuel supplies in North Africa. Director Arthur Hiller insisted on shooting in the actual Sahara despite warnings about health risks, leading to multiple cases of heat stroke and dehydration among cast and crew. The film's massive explosion sequences use so much dynamite that Libyan authorities initially suspected an actual military operation. The tank battles featured restored Panzer and Sherman tanks from museum collections, with mechanical failures constantly halting production. When told that his German-Jewish commandos subplot was historically implausible, Hiller produced declassified documents about the actual SIG units composed of German-Jewish volunteers who fought for the Allies. Hudson, typically cast in romantic roles, performed his own stunts, including a harrowing sequence where he navigates a live minefield. The film's unflinching portrayal of desert combat influenced later productions, including Raiders of the Lost Ark, with Spielberg specifically referencing its truck chase sequence as inspiration for his own. 17. Ambush Bay, 1966. The Pacific Theater's forgotten brutality captured on film. Ambush Bay follows Marine commandos on a desperate mission through Japanese-held Philippines to extract a code expert. Unlike European theater films with their picturesque villages, director Ron Winston plunged his cast into authentic jungle conditions, filming in actual Philippines locations where fighting had occurred just 2 decades earlier. The production employed Filipino veterans as consultants, many of whom broke down during filming, as scenes triggered combat memories. The film's jungle combat sequences were so physically demanding that star Hugh O'Brian later revealed the cast lost an average of 18 pounds during the 2-month shoot. When military advisors suggested softening the portrayal of Japanese tactics, Winston instead doubled down, incorporating rarely discussed war crimes based on survivor accounts. The film's controversial finale, showing the mission's Pyrrhic success, divided audiences expecting traditional heroism. Actor Mickey Rooney, himself a Bronze Star recipient for his World War II service, insisted that his character's death scene be reshot multiple times until it captured the inglorious reality of combat death as he had witnessed it. Though commercially unsuccessful, the film became required viewing at Marine Corps training facilities for its tactical accuracy. 18. The Secret War of Harry Frigg, 1968. Before Inglourious Basterds mixed comedy with W2, The Secret War of Harry Frigg had Paul Newman as a professional troublemaker sent to escape from a comfortable Italian prison camp. Director Jack Smite transformed a potentially lightweight comedy into a surprisingly nuanced exploration of class divisions within military hierarchy, with Newman's enlisted man outsmarting both enemy and Allied officers. The production secured permission to film in authentic Italian villas that had served as actual German headquarters, lending the comedy unexpected historical weight. Newman, known for his political activism, specifically requested script changes to highlight the often overlooked contributions of enlisted men rather than officers, based on his own naval service during the war. The film's depiction of Italian forces as reluctant, even comical participants in the war caused protests from Italian-American organizations, but was defended by Italian director Roberto Rossellini as painfully accurate. Despite its comedic framework, the film includes a surprisingly authentic escape sequence based on declassified OSS training materials, with techniques so effectively portrayed that several were omitted at the Pentagon's request. 19. The Devil's Brigade, 1968. The true story of misfits who became legends. The Devil's Brigade depicts the formation of the 1st Special Service Force, a joint Canadian-American commando unit that inspired modern special forces. William Holden leads a band of military convicts and disciplined Canadians who transform from enemies into elite warriors. Director Andrew V. McLaglen secured unprecedented military cooperation, filming at actual training facilities with serving Special Forces members as technical advisors. The production's mountain combat sequences were filmed in actual alpine conditions, so dangerous that insurance companies initially refused coverage. Several actors, including NFL star Joe Kapp, performed their own stunts in sequences so physically demanding that the film's training montage has reportedly been shown to actual military recruits as a challenge. The film's authentic portrayal of special operations techniques was so accurate that certain sequences were edited at the request of the Department of Defense to avoid revealing still-used tactics. When survivors of the actual unit attended the premiere, one reportedly stood up and declared, "They got it right. That's exactly how it was. We hated each other until we realized we needed each other to survive." 20. Counterpoint, 1968. Classical music meets warfare in the film critics couldn't categorize. Counterpoint stars Charlton Heston as a conductor forced to perform for a cultured Nazi general while planning his orchestra's escape. Director Ralph Nelson constructed a fully functional concert hall in the Austrian Alps, employing actual Philharmonic musicians who performed complete pieces during filming rather than miming to recordings. The film's central moral dilemma, whether art can transcend national enmity, was based on actual incidents where German officers protected cultural figures while participating in atrocities against civilians. Maximilian Schell's portrayal of the music-loving Nazi colonel was so unnervingly sympathetic that several Jewish organizations protested until learning Schell himself had fled Nazi persecution as a child. Heston spent 6 months learning to conduct convincingly, with legendary conductor Josef Krips coaching him between takes. The film's climactic escape sequence during Beethoven's Fifth Symphony used innovative sound design that synchronized gunfire with musical crescendos, creating an audio experience so disorienting that it influenced later directors, including Francis Ford Coppola, who cited it as inspiration for Apocalypse Now's helicopter attack sequence. 21st, Beach Red, 1967. The Pacific War's brutality uncensored. Beach Red follows Marines assaulting a Japanese-held island, with director Cornel Wilde creating combat sequences so realistic that several veterans complained they triggered PTSD. Unlike most war films of its era, Beach Red employed flash-cut editing to depict soldiers' memories and fears during battle, a technique so innovative that film schools still study its psychological impact. The production filmed on actual Pacific beaches where fighting had occurred, with local workers occasionally uncovering human remains during set construction. The film's controversial portrayal of Japanese defenders as individuals rather than stereotypes was nearly unprecedented, with Japanese soldiers shown missing their families just as Americans did, a humanizing approach that caused several distributors to reject the film. Wilde, himself a World War II veteran, insisted on authentic details other films sanitized: body parts after explosions, panic-induced vomiting during combat, and soldiers crying in terror. The film's graphic violence nearly earned it an X rating until Wilde successfully argued that sanitizing combat did a disservice to veterans' experiences. Though commercially unsuccessful, Beach Red influenced a generation of filmmakers, with Spielberg acknowledging its DNA in Saving Private Ryan's opening sequence. 22nd, The Train, 1964. Art versus warfare in a film that nearly killed its director. The Train stars Burt Lancaster as a French resistance fighter trying to stop a Nazi officer from stealing priceless paintings. Director John Frankenheimer replaced Arthur Penn mid-production and made a fateful decision: no miniatures or special effects. Every train crash and derailment would be real, using actual vintage locomotives, destroyed on camera. The production's commitment to authenticity extended beyond equipment. Lancaster performed all his own stunts despite being 50 years old, including a dangerous sequence jumping between moving train cars that the insurance company only discovered after filming. The film's railway workers were cast from actual French railroad employees, many of whom had participated in resistance activities during the occupation. The movie's moral complexity, questioning whether art is worth human lives, divided critics but fascinated audiences. French railway authorities were so impressed by the production's technical accuracy that they requested copies of the filming blueprints for training purposes. Frankenheimer later revealed that the stress of the production gave him a minor heart attack that he kept secret from the studio for fear of being replaced. 23rd. Operation Crossbow, 1965. Spy thriller meets war film in the true story, too classified to tell until the 1960s. Operation Crossbow reveals the Allied mission to destroy Nazi 5-1 and V-2 rocket facilities, with George Peppard and Sophia Loren navigating occupied Europe. Director Michael Anderson worked with actual British intelligence officers who had participated in the operation, incorporating recently declassified details that shocked audiences with their revelation of how close Germany came to turning the war's tide with revolutionary weapons. The production reconstructed rocket facilities with such accuracy that several technical advisors were investigated for potentially revealing still classified information. The film's rocket launch sequences utilized actual test footage secured from NASA engineers who had worked with captured German scientists after the war. When German audiences saw these sequences, many were stunned by details of their own nation's technology that had remained classified for decades. Sophia Loren's participation initially seemed like star casting, until producers revealed her character was based on a real Dutch resistance member whose actions had remained classified until 1962. The film's unflinching portrayal of Allied willingness to sacrifice agents for strategic advantage caused controversy, but was defended by former Special Operations executive members as painfully truthful. So, which film on this list shocked you the most? Was it the right decision for The Train to destroy actual vintage locomotives for authenticity? And the question that divides film scholars to this day: did 1960s war cinema do more to honor veterans by showing their experiences honestly, or did it begin the problematic glorification of combat that influences how we view warfare even now?